Yes, so the topic courage to be is a very important topic because it addresses all our existential problems. Existential problems, to put it in very simple words, is the problem of our existence. So first we assume, or we have to be sure that this life is full of problems. It's not always without problems. In fact, there are more problems than joy and happiness. That's the experience of every individual. Nobody can deny this. There are problems, physical problems, health issues, there are mental problems, there are other deeply existential problems, which requires the courage to be. So there is a famous scene in Hamlet. All of you know Shakespeare's, if you have gone through his famous play. Shakespeare was, of course, a great philosopher as well. So the dialogue, Hamlet is confused, like most of us. And he wants to solve the problems of life. And in that chapter, he starts with the sentence, to be or not to be. Now what does it mean? First is, to be means to live. To live in a way that gives us joy, peace, and whatever we desire in life. That is one way of living, to be. Not to be means, in that particular play of Shakespeare, he is referring not to be means suicide or death. If it is intentional, we call it suicide. If it is unintentional and we neglect the way we live, we may die a natural death, but the causes for our death, we are responsible. It's not just the way we live physically that leads to death. How we think, how our emotions affect us, the mind affects the body, body affects the mind. So to not to be means to die. If we want immediate death, we commit suicide. So that is the problem Hamlet faced. And he is wondering, in this drama, in this play which Shakespeare has written, whether life would be better, because his life was full of misery. But at the same time, to be or not to be means he thinks, if I end my life, this physical existence, by committing suicide or by any other way, whether the life after death is better than the life which I am living now. It may be full of suffering, but what is the guarantee that the life, because it is also very uncertain, what will happen to me? This young boy Nachiketa asks the same question. That's the essence of what courage to be means, to be, to live. So to know how to live, we have to know how to die. They are opposite sides of the same coin. You can't have one without having the other. So, spirituality, the sciences that we study, the skills that we develop in schools, everything teaches us to be, how to be. But how not to be? How to attain immortal life? That is taught only by spirituality. So, an ideal education for all growing up children would be to teach at least 50% of both. How to be and how not to be. I mean, not to die the way other people die, but prepare oneself for immortality. That is the very simple way one can analyze one's life. All our philosophies, all our religions, all our spirituality, all spiritual practices, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, nationality, everything has been proposed or has been put forward by the prophets, by the saints, by the scriptures to solve this eternal problem, to be or not to be. Shakespeare put it very simply, and if we read the character of Hamlet, We know how difficult it was for him to take a decision to be or not to be. We don't think about it because very often most of the privileged people, I'm not talking of the young children who are underprivileged. For them, very often the solution is not to be. They wish why I have been born. But I'm talking of those people who by ordinary standards lead a very happy, if not a very comfortable, a more or less happy life. For them the question of not to be does not arise. In fact, in Nachiketa also was a very happy boy. It's not necessary that one has to suffer pain to realize what it is not to be, what it is to die and what happens after death. This boy was very intelligent, very discriminative, full of Shraddha. As Swamiji says, we should have Shraddha. Shraddha means conviction in both this life and afterlife. Courage to have to be and not to be. It requires courage to be, to live, negotiate all the problems of life. It requires tremendous courage. That's one part of it. And our education more or less helps us to do it. I'm not saying there are wonderful things that have been developed by the educational systems all over the world. Training children, training young boys, training students, young boys and girls, how to lead a life of skill, a skillful life, thoughtful life, which enables us to be for as long a time we can conceive of, say 100 years. But our educationists in India, or maybe in other countries as well, I should not single out India, everywhere every prophet has thought about these deeper questions. They were more interested, or at least they were interested, 50% they were interested in what happens after death. The problem to be, courage to be is understood. We can develop it, and every effort, physics, chemistry, medicine, everybody is trying to develop that and see that we live as happily as possible in this gross world through our education, having a happy mind, a peaceful mind. All those things train us how to be, train us to explore all the human possibilities. But when we come to higher human possibilities, which the young boy, just 14-year-old boy, who asked this question, though he was very happy and his father was wanted to teach him how he can be happier by creating an illusory heaven. I call it deliberately, I call it illusory. Because according to Vedanta, heaven is also illusory. Everything is an illusion. But we live with illusion. Our living itself is an illusion for Vedantic, according to Vedanta. So this father, who was well versed in the scriptures, at least he thought he was well versed, and he thought at least he was wiser than his young boy, he was planning a great sacrifice. In those days they believed, as all religions believe, that you do some meritorious act, you will live happily ever after in heaven, not knowing fully well what that nature of heaven is. It's full of uncertainty, but we don't bother. We just blindly follow what the books say. They speak of heavens, no doubt. Every religion speaks of heaven, and everybody wants to go to heaven. Whatever little merit we do, helping others, doing some puja, yagnas, sacrifices, rituals, is just to go to heaven. And his father was a student of scriptures, and he was his son's guru also. So he was planning some ritual which would enable him to go to heaven after death. Obviously, he knew that life after you die is equally important. At least that much knowledge his father had. But he thought, by doing good deeds now, according to the scriptures, I will assure not only my present life but my life hereafter. So he wanted to make sure that his heaven is taken care of, reserved seat in heaven. So, but this young boy was more intelligent than his father because he had read the scriptures and he had faith in all the tenets of spirituality. Upanishads speak of heaven, but not as the ultimate goal. It's just a preliminary goal, and this boy knew it. He has learned from his father, but his priorities were correct. He said, I don't want this temporary heaven, I want a permanent heaven, or a permanent, I want to reach immortality, which the scripture says. Because the same thing was taught by his father, but his father was happy. It's like some students say, okay, let me just do graduation and do some post-graduation. But some people say, no, I want to do PhD. I want to go see how much I can go. Can do post-doctorate if I can. So that yearning to think beyond, to extend the limits of human possibilities. That is what we discuss in the Saturday class. It's a very, very scientifically planned talk, talk based on the Upanishadic values, because Upanishad explores all the human possibilities. It starts with our physical health, it starts with our physical possibilities, the Annamaya Kosha. According to our scriptures, there are 5 levels of existence. When we say to be, what does it mean? To develop ourselves. We should have the courage to be, courage to develop our physical Annamaya Kosha, that is our physical body. Nothing wrong in that. It's very essential. In fact, it is very essential. So that is why these things are taught in the beginning. Start with Annamaya Kosha. Then we have the next level of existence, which helps us to take care of the body, the biological forces, the 5 pranas. I don't want to go into details of those 5 pranas. Some of the pranas are the way we breathe, the way we digest our food, the way the circulation takes place, the heart beats. Everything is determined by prana. Any pranic imbalance results in ill health, or all sickness, according to our ancient Indian medical system, is because of this imbalance of humors, or it is a combination of Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha. So any imbalance which is caused either by food or caused by wrong thinking, it can be both ways. Prana is a small layer between our Manomaya Kosha, the 3rd layer, and the Annamaya Kosha. So don't think only the food will impact our prana. It is the mind also. That's why we call these diseases psychosomatic. Somatic means concerning body, psycho means concerning the mind. So mind and body both cause an imbalance in our 2nd layer. And this 2nd layer, the prana, when it gets disturbed, it shatters not only the body, but if it shatters the body, there is some remedy. But if it shatters the mind, the problem is more serious. Because with a healthy body, if you do not have a healthy mind, then it's of no use. So this prana has to be taken care of. Then the next possibility we discuss is, how can we make the mind more useful? We have the body, we have all the senses, the sense organs, eyes, everything has to be sharp, and it has to have the capacity to grasp things. There's a lot of training going on in the field of education, how to make children learn more and more things in less and less time. So that is excellence in using the Annamaya Kosha, the sense organs, but behind that is the mind. So that is also taken care of so nicely by different skills that we develop. The skill to hear, the skill to see. There are many skills which are automatically imbibed by children when they undergo a serious system of study. whether it is school level, college level, or even postgraduate. Every time they are honing their skills, making it more and more, making their mind more and more skillful. That is the Manomaya Kosha. But spirituality begins from the third level. Third and fourth levels are totally ignored, at least in most of the educational systems. It's ignored because we have another aspect of mind. When you say we have to be strong physically, that is one level of being. So we should have courage and the energy to develop our body, develop our senses. Then we should have the courage to perform pranayama and asanas, which are the lower steps of yoga, so that the prana also is developed properly and the good health that we have continues till we live as far as possible. The prana helps. Controlling of prana, and many of our religious practices are like fasting, like whatever little rituals we do. So much of physical labor is also involved. Rituals are meant to make you fit. All the yoga that we do in Patanjali's system, the asanas, takes care of the first two levels. But when the concentration increases, the level of concentration, physical as well as pranic concentration, the capacity of the child or the growing up child to focus on things that he thinks will help him, that increases. That is the development of the Manomaya Kosha, the third level. But Vedanta says these three levels will ensure that you live a happy life, materially happy life, provided the skill sets that you have are used properly. How do you use the skill sets, the mental capacity that we have developed? Everybody is taught in the school. Suppose he is physically very fit and he is a very strong person. The prana has been taken care of. Even the intellectual skill sets he has developed, whatever was available, whatever resources he had has been developed. But how to use it and what is the purpose of developing the skill sets, that is determined by the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is also known as the power to discriminate. So when we develop courses for young students of professional courses like engineering, there was a very interesting chapter which was known, because if we say Viveka, Vairagya, people will not listen. They don't want religious terminology. We just simply told them 2 chapters, mind you. It was a compulsory course which was more than 100,000 students belonging to 500 colleges. We got an opportunity, we experimented, and it is known as the power of choices. It has been converted into a small book. We don't know how making the right choice helps a human being. It can make or break a person. Making the right choice at the right time. Now we called it was given a simplistic name, power of choices. But is making a choice such an easy thing? It is also in Sanskrit known as Viveka. Deliberately we use the word choices because people can relate to it. Young students can relate to it. So the power to make the right choice at the right time, as Nachiketa did, which his father did not have. He perhaps had the 3 other powers. The lower 3 he could develop very well. And he was preparing to go to heaven. But Nachiketa, the 14-year-old boy, says, "Father, you are making a wrong choice here. I think something is wrong, because you have taught me that we should develop the power to make the right choice, and you are making the wrong choice by selecting this ritual which will enable you to go to heaven, because you have taught me that heaven is temporary. So are you not making a wrong choice?" So he was very much upset. He sends him to the king of death that story, to cut the long story short, the power of the human mind, which is the higher mind, the buddhi. Buddhi is something which has to be developed very consciously as we develop our body, our mind and our prana. So we become strong physically, we become strong mentally in the sense mental strength or the courage to be does not come unless we have this buddhi. So our scriptures, the ancient scriptures and scriptures of the entire world believed that this capacity or this power to be comes at the fourth level. It becomes the power to choose. The power to choose is very important, because with a strong body, strong mind, you are allowing a potential giant or a potential god. He'll be going to society. If he takes a wrong choice, that same strength will destroy. That is the story behind all our Puranas, Asuras and Devas. Asuras are very strong people, mind you. We always show that Asuras always win and the poor Devas are losing the battle. It's not just myth, it's a harsh reality that power is not enough. Power with goodness is not enough. We should have power. Devas, unfortunately, who are represented by at least 50% of the population, Devas are people with good intentions but with less power, less strength. And Asuras are people with more power or more strength but with less goodness, more evil in them. So that is why they cause havoc. And to balance that, the story goes, the Devas and Asuras fight, and then poor Vishnu has to come or Shiva has to come. They will go and ask him, Indra himself, the Lord of Devas. They are not just cock and bull stories, they are facts of human society, life. He comes and says, now you protect, then God will remind, Vishnu will tell them, this time I will protect you. But remember, it's not enough to be good. You are good people, but still you are lazy people. You don't have the strength to back your goodness. So you need to be strong. That is the lesson. That is why when young boy goes to Yama, Nachiketa is so confident that he asks him, are you qualified to learn this lessons of immortality? You have come here, you want to know the secret of death, why don't you go back and enjoy the world? He says, no. So he has developed a very strong sense of choice, discrimination. And then Yama, the god of death, also knows that he has come with a tremendous determination, Shraddha, and also strength. So goodness plus strength enables everybody to explore and this buddhi gives us strength. So the whole essence of mantras, which we will discuss in the next session, is represented by the Gayatri mantra, which says, Om Bhur Bhuvaswaha. All of you know that mantra. Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. So they don't ask for physical strength, mental strength. They ask for buddhi, the fourth level of strength which one per people have to develop. Dhiyo Yona. Dhi means buddhi. So we pray to the Lord. All the other three things I will manage to get it from my parents, my peers, school and all those things. But for buddhi I have to approach only you. So the sun god, which is symbolic of light, you can meditate on any god. But normally in those days, in the Rig Veda, where the Gayatri mantra is there, the sun was supposed to be a symbol of light, illumination, strength, power. The sun sustains the whole universe. Without sun we are all gone. So they chose the sun as a symbol of the Supreme, who can give us the buddhi. So this mantra, that is the wonderful nature of these Vedic mantras. They not only empower you by creating sound vibrations, they create a corresponding strong mental vibrations also. in the cosmic mind, and we get the benefit. We connect ourselves. It's like connecting your electricity to a very large generator. If the generator is fine, then the electricity, so if the source is good, then you have no problems. The power will sustain you. So we pray to the Supreme Sun, who is symbolic of Buddhi, who gives light, not just physical light, but also the capacity to choose the right thing over the wrong. So we convert ourselves into Devas from Asuras, and that one difference between Devas and Asuras is this power to choose rightly, correctly. So once having developed that, now say you have made the right choice. The problem does not end there. We make a right choice, then we every time, as if you know, when we go to travel, many times there are two ways. Now if you take a wrong road, then you end up somewhere else if you take the right road. So every time you have to stop and decide. So this power of making choices starts immediately after birth. Of course you may say, after birth the child has no choice. Even when he grows up, the child doesn't have a choice, unfortunately, because the parents force their choices on their parent and on their children. So why should the child depend on your choice? Your choice is your own. Even in secular matters, I am not talking of spiritual choices. That is still worse. If you make a spiritual choice for your children, it is still worse. But we ourselves make wrong choices and force our younger generation to make the wrong choices. So that is why the idea of Guru has come. In our scriptures, since we don't know how to make the choice, we need somebody who has some experience of life and who belongs to a particular tradition. Just as when we choose a university, we choose a university which has a very, very old and strong tradition. Why do we consider Oxford to be better than many other universities? You ask people, why don't you go, you will get knowledge anywhere. He said, no. I know that this institution or this university has a tradition. And here, whether I am fit or not, if I manage to get in, I have a better chance to get the correct knowledge. So that's the idea of tradition. Parampara, we call it parampara. These things are very important because unless you are linked to a parampara, you don't get the true knowledge. Unless you are linked to a tradition, you don't get true knowledge. And one who is a true representative of that parampara, if you go to him, there is less suffering. So that's another idea, that to make the right choice, you should have a person who has made a right choice in his own life. So just as you to learn secular subjects, you have to have an expert who knows that subject thoroughly, who can demonstrate to you this is how these things should be done, this is how these things should not be done, and what to do, what not to. So the power of choices, Buddhi is so important that we are using it every moment of our life. Every small or big decision we take, whether to eat this or not, whether to do this or choose one thing over the other. Apparently it is a very simple task, but we can't leave it to chance. We can't say that, okay, in Hindi they say chalta hai. Means you can't say when you go to a crossroad, okay, let me try this way or that way. Then you'll have to come back all the way. So that shows how the power of, in fact, the course that we designed for these children, we showed them the tree of choice. It was so beautifully explained. We had a lot of professionals who helped us to do. They showed a tree and then it branches out. And when it branches out, you show that your target was somewhere, but you took a wrong choice, made a wrong choice, and you often went to another place where you had not intended to go. So the tree of choice is what to climb the tree of choice, to make the right choice is what Vijnanamaya Kosha, what spirituality in the initial stages helps us to do. In fact, the whole of spirituality begins, let me repeat, it begins only when you start making the right choices in life. Very often, we think we can make the right choice in life, but we are not equipped because the light of buddhi does not enable us to consistently make right choices in life. So the power to make right choices is so important. It is fundamental to the development of our higher levels of personality. As I said, the three levels are taken care of by modern education. We know how to make our body strong, we know how to make our mind strong. Our skill sets, I would not say mind, because mind has two parts, two distinct faculties. According to the Vedanta tradition, mind has two distinct faculties. One is a reactive mind, to put it very simply. One is the reactive mind, one is a discriminative mind, or the one part of the mind, the lower mind, enables you to react to external stimuli. Even dogs and animals have much more developed reactive mind. But the difference between animals and us is that we have a superior kind of mind, which is known as the power to make choices or discrimination, to do the right thing at the right time. It requires the difference between just plain intelligence and wisdom is using the intelligence or the skill sets that we have to make the right choice at the right time, which can make or break a person. This is what is meant by the higher mind. So the spiritual life of a person begins when he starts exercising the power of choice. In Vedanta it is known as Viveka. Viveka means to decide to make the right choice. So much importance is given, and it's supposed to be a basic qualification. That is why we have this Gayatri Mantra and the Brahmacharya given to students in the Gurukula. That was the ancient system. You first master this dhi, develop your buddhi, and later on, using that buddhi, we have to negotiate higher levels of personality. I'll come to that later. How many minutes do we have? Yeah. So, to negotiate, we need an instrument. Just as to understand, develop skill sets in the physical world, we should have sharp eyes, sharp ears, the power to interpret data that we get from the outside world and apply it to particular situations. That's all that we do in developing physical, mental skills. That's what we do. Even life skills, the pranic skills, as I told you, the biological forces. The sportsmen have to learn how to handle the prana. They do the second level of our existence. Whereas the gymnasts and all of them, they use those two skills. But when you become more and more intellectual, then you learn how to handle all the inputs you get from the eyes, ears, smell, and then your the lower logical mind. You use them to interpret the data and make it flow through useful channels to get some good output. So that is what mental excellence, or for most people that is the height of intellectual intelligence. But none of these three helps you to make the right choice. That's the fundamental difference between an animal. Animal can be highly skilled, more skilled than human beings. It can see things, it can, you may say, intuitively or maybe instinctively. I would not use the word intuition. Instinct is what they have they are far more instinctive. something tells them there is danger. So they are far more skilled than human beings. We are not so instinctive in our behavior, because in the human being, instinct has been replaced by intuition. And that intuition is the first step in developing a true personality. And that intuition is known as buddhi, or the power to make choices. I am repeating this again and again because we unless our base is strong, we can't expect to make any spiritual progress. The higher realities of spiritual life are far off. I mean, they are almost inaccessible if you don't have a buddhi. That is why they say in the Hindu tradition, in the Indian tradition, brahmacharya has to be practiced for a long time. When the Gayatri is given by the father to the son, and he said, you focus on this. Once you realize your buddhi becomes finely developed, then you come to me again. Then you go for higher spiritual practices. Before that there is... So in initiation also, any kind of spiritual initiation or spiritual discipline, we have to begin with buddhi. With that buddhi, or with that developed, the power of making the right choice in life, if that is fully developed, then there are less chances of making mistakes, taking wrong decisions. So the power of choice does not come to animals. They just behave or act on instinct. But we have a faculty known as intuition. So all the great discoveries, even in sciences, you see, Einstein himself says, it is during those strange moments of intuition that they made these wonderful discoveries. No amount of logical thinking or training in the laboratory or anywhere else will help the discovery. You see, they will think very deep, they will use their reactive mind, they will train their mind, and all their life they may study. But when they make these discoveries, like Archimedes, he developed. He was just taking a bath, and he suddenly discovered the principle of this water displacement. The idea suddenly came to him. The theory was there, and the experiments he was doing in the lab. But during some intuitive moments of life, provided we have developed that intuition, makes us special, makes us different. Einstein himself said he had autistic learning difficulties when he was young. But how did he make his discoveries? Not by skill. Otherwise, there are many more skilled people than him who were in the university. He somehow, most of these people who are exceptionally intelligent, even in the physical field, have this power of intuition. Somehow they have developed this power of intuition, which is absolutely essential. In physical sciences, to live a life, happy life in this world, you may not require this intuition. You may become a genius in the world, but that is with the power of intuition. Sometimes it comes in a flash, or sometimes it is a result of deep concentration. Now we come to the essence of how to develop this intuition, or the fourth level of our personality, which makes us a truly empowered human being. The courage to transcend the three levels and establish ourselves in the fourth level of Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is also known as the power of intuition. So Dhi means it enables you to see things which normal people will overlook. That intuition Nachiketa had. So Nachiketa could see through his things. His father could not. So he tells his father, who was his teacher also, Father, this is something wrong, you have missed out. Do you not think this is wrong? This is what I think is right. He was very humble in the beginning, but his father was terribly angry, as normally incompetent teachers do. They just scold the students. They don't allow that creativity to come out, that intuitive power to develop. So he scolded him. He said, what do you know? I am your teacher. I know better. Who are you to question me? But he did not give up. That requires courage. That courage which made Swami Vivekananda question Sri Ramakrishna, his own guru. Not for 1 year, for 6 long years, as he told Sister Nivedita, I quarreled with my guru, my teacher, for 6 long years. Because Nivedita was thinking, Sister Nivedita was also known as Margaret Noble, she also had a very original and creative mind. She was not going to listen. She had rejected many things. She tried Christianity, dogmatic Christianity, she tried Buddhism, she tried Hinduism, she went to Theosophy. She was searching for something which is logical, intuitive, and which would satisfy a highly developed mind. And Swami Vivekananda did not stop her creativity. Sometimes she said, am I arguing too much? Do you think? He says, no, you just think in your own way. It doesn't mind. You don't worry, I have also done the same thing, what you are doing with me. That's the right kind of teacher. He said, for 6 years I fought with my master, Sri Ramakrishna. Of course, he knew he was great. He was an excellent teacher, but his doubtful mind would not rest content till he got the experience, not just the answer. If somebody said, I have seen God, I have seen this vision, he said, how can I believe? Anybody can say, I have so many experiences. The Vedic rishis, if you see, the truths that we find are based on experiences. Not just one experience, repeated experiences, again and again validated in the laboratory of life. These experiences, spiritual experiences, the collection of all the scriptures, it can be Bible, it can be any other scripture in the world. They are not just, otherwise they would not have survived. Just as many of the scientific laws are discarded when better laws are discovered, so also in Vedas, all the lower laws were accepted, like going to heaven, okay, fine. But then when it was discovered that even that is not a satisfactory answer, the rishis who made higher discoveries, they simply discarded it. So we started with the law of gravitation. Newton's law worked perfectly in this gross world, in the macrocosm. But when you go into the microcosm, when you go into deeper fields, the quantum physics, and when atoms and immeasurable quantities are, we try to measure them, when we find these laws of gravity and laws of Newton's law of motion do not hold true. There are new laws. And the scientific spirit would be to accept those new laws, which works in a different condition, and accept these lower laws also. So there are lower laws in spiritual life as well. So we don't have to criticize them. But we have to definitely tell people that the lower laws are just stepping stones. You don't just get stuck at Newton's law, thinking that these laws are universal. There are other universal laws which can be verified, proved in the laboratory. At a microcosmic level, you have to accept those, and science has to progress. So also in spirituality, laws were made, people followed religion, people followed dogmas, there were quarrels, there were wars over religion. But then some wise people in every religion, it's in every religion, some wise people saw things with an intuitive mind, a discriminative mind. They made the right choice. And finally, if you say the higher you go in any religion, you come to a common meeting point. So when Vedanta says this higher reality is something you have to discover within, we should remind ourselves of the wonderful teaching of, there are so many teachings in the Bible, but Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. Or the heaven that you are searching is not somewhere outside. You don't have to search for a heaven outside, because it is within. It is the life of spirit that is more important than material development, because we travel from gross to subtle, not the other way around. So Swami Vivekananda gave one of the most important definition of civilization. Everybody thinks ours is a civilization, all others are brutes. and that's why they fight wars, not knowing that all are brutes, in fact, if they are after these gross pursuits. What makes a civilization? This question was asked by some historians, sociologists, who always want to create a imaginary society where everybody would be peaceful, everybody would be happy, cooperative, there will be no wars, which is almost an impossibility. If you see the whole history, there is hardly civilization anywhere. That is why Samuel Huntington wrote a beautiful book, The Clash of Civilizations. He saw the whole history of humankind is just a clash between civilizations. Between the Greek civilization, between the other Oriental civilizations, everybody thinks his civilization is the best and everybody should live the way you live. So whether it is the communists or the Democrats or the conservatives, everybody, political systems also, they think their system is the best. The problem is because the lower we go, the clashes will be more. So civilization, Swami Vivekananda said, is very rarely to be seen. So somebody asked him, how do you define your idea of civilization? He says, civilization is the progressive reading of spirit into matter. Exactly the words Jesus uttered. The kingdom of God is the kingdom of spirit. That's why he didn't bother when he was crucified, because after all you are crucifying the body which is gross. But you can't kill the spirit. That's what Vedanta says. So at the fundamental level, the higher you go, as you transcend the three koshas, you go to the higher kosha, that is the fourth kosha, which is known as Vijnanamaya kosha. You decide, you have now a very well developed power of choice. Like Nachiketa, he had that, that's why he went to the king of death, Yama. It's not so easy for a 14-year-old boy to think so deeply about the existential problems, and it requires courage. That's what we discussed in the beginning. Professor Kurd said that courage, we require courage. Courage to do what? Courage to make a strong body, definitely you need courage to fight. That is the lowest courage. Then we have courage to defeat other people in this highly competitive world, the courage to stay afloat through your intellectual capacity. Nowadays it's become more and more difficult. You have to update your knowledge always. And if you are a sportsman, you have to keep your prana very active. So that also requires courage to practice hours and hours and hours. Then you might hope to get a medal. So that is courage to strengthen your prana. That is another strength, slightly higher level of strength. Then courage to think and take bold decisions. The courage to be innovative and do something which others could not do, and then you excel. That shows the innovative mind, the innovative skill set that we develop. That also requires courage. But requires more courage. The more subtle you go, it requires more courage to make the right choice. Because very often, as so beautifully put, it's one of the key points of Kathopanishad, where Nachiketa, Yama is telling, when you make a choice, remember this golden rule. This is for spiritual development. You have to remember a golden rule. Two things will always approach you. As two roads come, when we come to crossroads, you will find one road goes here, you don't know which road to take. But follow this advice and you will take the right road always. So he says, two things approach a human being in every moment of their life. Shreya and Preya. Don't be afraid of the Sanskrit words. It simply means, Shreya means that which is good, the right way. And Preya means that which is pleasant, apparently pleasant. So naturally, when a person is trained, when he grows up, we are always asked to choose the pleasant. We never, if take a small child, he says, no, I would rather sit quietly, or maybe I will rest rather than work hard. If you choose the way of the pleasant, then you will make him lazy. But if you are strict with your discipline, you will say, no, this is not pleasant, but it is good. So exercising, following a particular discipline, physical or mental. He says, no, I can't do this. So you just say, okay, forget it, I can't understand mathematics. So very often that which is good is not pleasant. For a person who hates mathematics, for him to avoid mathematics, choose some other subject, but you tell him, why do you hate? Have you ever thought? So why don't you choose the good over the pleasant? Preya means that which appears to be pleasant, appears to be easy. So we never teach ourselves and our children to choose that which is difficult. So that is a great lesson we learn from Swami Vivekananda. If somebody told him, you can't do this, it's beyond your capacity, he had that energy. He said, no, then I will definitely do it. Because it cannot be done, that's the reason why I will do it. So that is what Shreya means. Shreya means choosing the more difficult perhaps, not necessarily, but very often Shreya is more painful. Discipline is painful, to hold on to good is painful, to suffer is painful. So everybody wants to avoid, he wants the pleasant. So prayer is good in the initial stages. We call it the path of least resistance. Very often people think they are giving good advice by saying, no, you follow the path of least resistance. You don't we actually spoil the children. By, he doesn't like discipline, okay, let him be free. Actually the freedom that children want to enjoy is not a freedom, they just want to relax, they just want to choose the path of prayer, which is more pleasant. And if we encourage that, then we are taking them away from Shreya. Shreya is the path of discipline. But as I said, it should not be enforced. It has to come from within, as it came to Nachiketa. In fact, Yama tested him. He said, I am giving you, don't come to this, ask me this question, very difficult question of life after death. What happens after death? It is a very unpleasant question, just forget it. You take this money, you enjoy the wealth, go back. So that is, he was offering him prayer. He was offering him the pleasant things of life. But that boy was very sharp. He said, no, I would rather choose this path of good, because this is why I have come here. So this right choice which he made at that time made him a student, or maybe made him a person, we call it adhikari. He was qualified for higher knowledge. Then Yama told him, okay, since you have that kind of faith, you have that courage to know higher things, now I accept you as a student. Otherwise, anybody else would have fallen for the pleasant, for the things which Yama offered him. He said, why don't you take it and go? The whole world is enjoying, you enjoy. He said, no, I know it is temporary, I want something, I want to solve all the problems of my life. You don't just distract me by solving some problems and then putting me into deeper trouble. So prayer is what we often choose, and Shreya is what is to be really chosen. So this power of choice is the fourth level of human possibility that we discover or uncover. It is there, already there. Everybody is born with that capacity. In fact, the innocent child is born with that capacity. It is we who train them in a wrong way, make them follow So very often, the children blame their parents. See, if you had disciplined me earlier, then it would have saved me a lot of trouble. Now so many boys and girls have, much better than me because of some kind of discipline. Their parents or their teachers or their peers force them against their wish, because it is difficult to follow Shreya. The path of good is always beset with lot of difficulties. So that level after we cross, we come to another level which in Vedanta is known as Anandamaya Kosha. Now this word is a bit confusing. Anandamaya is not pleasure. Anandamaya Kosha, finished? Yeah. The fifth kosha. Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah. So the Anandamaya Kosha is you may say it's the hard disk of a computer. There are many things unknown. So when you explore our inner possibilities, all the possibilities, this is the one possibility which we have but we don't know we possess it. We may know how the computer functions, everything, but there are many things which are in the hard disk inside, which is known as our causal body or the Annamaya Kosha, which we have to teach. After developing, I took some time to explain this again and again, how important power of choice is. Once having made that, once having that buddhi, then we have to uncover what is really our heritage, what is there, what are the things there, what are the causal realities that have been stored in a form which are not very easily accessible right now. But if we know the right technique, the right software, we can make this Anandamaya Kosha work to our advantage. That is the real purpose of all our sadhana, which we'll discuss in the next session. How mantra, how yoga in the real sense of the term, how mantra and how these things help us to not only give us that power of choice or that intuitive mind, but use that intuitive mind as a searchlight to find out our hidden possibilities. There are infinite possibilities. Swamiji says there is a treasure house of possibilities which we either don't explore or we don't have time to explore. We are so busy with lower things that we don't explore. Don't allow the child. The right age is when the child is growing, because he is with a very, very fresh mind. He is not spoiled by the world. So that is why these ideas have to be given when they are young. Nachiketa was, as I told, 14 years, but fortunately he educated himself in the right way and then he became qualified to receive the higher knowledge. And Yama was so happy to find a wonderful disciple. And he said, it's so rare to get a wonderful disciple like you. There are two things are very rare, an ideal teacher and an ideal student. And here both of them came together. The Upanishad says, when the ideal teacher and the ideal disciple comes, then there is wonderful development. So this Karana Sharira, or you may say Karana Sharira is one way of describing it. It is the Anandamaya Kosha, or the innermost core of human being. When Jesus says the kingdom of God is within you, it is this kingdom he is referring to. So the technique, the torch or the light of buddhi, which is now focusing outside, has to be focused within. So again and again the Prophet said, don't search for something outside when the real thing is inside. So before you die, Nachiketa is told that try to attain to that Atman which is within, that great treasure house that is within. You may not discover the Atman, the pure consciousness, all of a sudden, which is our eternal reality, but slowly we will be making progress. But only if you have that Vijnanamaya Kosha very well developed and that intuitive mind which can understand things which normal human beings ignore. You have to see through things. You have to see through the frailties of human life. The things that we see around and which mesmerize us, we have to see through those and try to focus and find out if really it's a scientific approach to spiritual life. Why don't you see? Sri Ramakrishna told Naren, it's not just I'm not claiming that I have this vision or I have this experience. I can not only see or experience it myself, I can train you in such a way that you can experience it. That's a true scientist. A true scientist will never say, I am your professor, you just believe me. He said, no, you come to the laboratory, I'll show how I proved it, how I experimented and how I proved it. And this is the experience you will have. You do it. That is how the whole idea of science of mantras. They don't say these mantras, you give the mantra and it follows. The teacher has to take the responsibility to see that every step he takes using the techniques. In the laboratory, you can't say these are the instruments you work. Yesterday we went to see some very complicated laser equipment, very, very costly. But you put a ignorant person there. I saw how he blew up the whole equipment because he did not know how to use it. Similarly, in the spiritual life also, these things are not to be trifled with. When we talk of spiritual initiation, everybody thinks it's like getting admitted to some course. It is a very serious business. It can decide the future of our lives. It is much more serious than getting admission to some university. But people seem to think that because the higher we go, the higher the possibilities that we wish to discover, the more important and more careful we have to be. So with a very fine torch of intuition, we explore that inner world. And then we can say we really have the courage to be ourselves. We don't want to depend on other people to make us happy. That courage which we have that enables us to live our life on our own terms, if necessary alone. People are so much afraid of loneliness. Loneliness has become such a disease. Everybody wants company for what? I don't know. Because if we have learned to go within, then you will actually detest company. You will be happiest when you are alone. So I'll conclude and we will continue this science of discovering our human possibilities in the next session.
Thank you, Maharaj. You have
Stand here.
Rama.